Cell Block D, Chapter 1, Introduction. My name doesn't matter much anymore, but back then I was Officer Marcus Webb, and I'd worked the night shift at Blackwood County Correctional for 6 years, long enough to know every groan the building made when the heat kicked on, every guard's cough, every inmate's snore pattern, long enough to stop being scared of the dark hallways. Blackwood wasn't the worst facility in the state, but it wasn't the newest either. Built in 1962, all cinder block and rusted pipes, the kind of place that smelled permanently like bleach, fighting a losing battle against something worse underneath. I liked the night shift, honestly. Less paperwork, fewer administrators breathing down my neck, just me, my radio, and 400 sleeping men who mostly left me alone. My wife Denise used to tease me about it. "You'd rather sit with criminals all night than come home to me," she'd say, only half joking, and I'd kiss her forehead and tell her the overtime paid for our daughter's braces. That part was true. The other part, the part where I actually liked the silence of those hallways at 3 a.m., I never quite explained to her. Cell Block D was the oldest wing, scheduled for demolition once the new building finished construction. Half the cells sat empty. The population consolidated into blocks A through C. Nobody wanted D duty. The lighting flickered no matter how many times maintenance replaced the ballasts. And there was a smell down there, faint but persistent, like a nosebleed gone stale. I got assigned to D permanent nights in March. My sergeant, a tired man named Ruiz, wouldn't quite meet my eyes when he told me. "It's quiet duty," he said. "Nobody back there but Delgado, and he don't give anybody trouble." Delgado. I'd heard the name before but never worked directly with him. Convicted of killing his own brother 15 years back. Some argument over inheritance that ended with a claw hammer. He'd been a model prisoner ever since, they said. Kept to himself. Read the Bible, cover to cover 11 times, according to the chaplain. The first night I walked D Block, my footsteps echoed strange, not just loud, wrong, like the sound came back to me a half-second late, like the walls were thinking about it before they let the noise return. I told myself it was just an old building settling. Delgado's cell was near the end, cell 14. When I passed with my flashlight that first night, he was sitting upright on his bunk, not sleeping, just staring at the wall across from him with his hands folded in his lap like a man praying without moving his lips. "Evening, Delgado," I said, "because you're supposed to acknowledge them, keep things human." He didn't answer. He didn't even blink. I moved on, but something crawled up the back of my neck that I couldn't name, and I didn't look back at his cell again that whole shift. Chapter 2. Strange Events. The first week passed uneventfully enough, if you don't count the small things. I started counting them anyway, quietly, the way you count anything that keeps happening, even though it shouldn't. The temperature in the D Block hallway ran cold. Not just cold, specifically cold, like someone had opened a walk-in freezer door somewhere close by. Maintenance checked the vents twice and found nothing wrong. "Old building," the technician said, shrugging. The same words everyone used for everything they couldn't explain. Then there was the radio static. Every night around 2:40 a.m., my handheld would crackle with interference, just for maybe 10 seconds. A sound like someone breathing through gritted teeth, mixed with white noise. I mentioned it to another guard, a big quiet man named Pruitt, who covered Block C. "Might be atmospheric," he said, not looking up from his crossword. "Old wiring does weird things." but Pruitt's eyes flicked toward D Block's door when he said it, and he didn't ask any follow-up questions, which told me more than if he had. On the 9th night, I found chalk marks on the floor outside cell 14. Small marks, almost like tally marks, 7 of them in a cluster near the drain grate. I asked Delgado about it during count. "Did you make these marks?" He looked at me for a long moment. His eyes were pale brown, almost yellow under the bad lighting, and there was something patient in them that unsettled me more than anger would have. "He's still counting," Delgado said. "Who is?" Delgado just looked back at the wall and didn't answer again. I logged it as inmate behavior, nothing more, filed the incident report, moved on with my rounds. But I didn't sleep well that morning when I got home. I kept seeing those 7 marks in the dark behind my eyelids, arranged in a pattern I couldn't quite place, like they meant something specific, and I was too stupid to read it. Denise noticed I'd gotten quieter. "You eating okay at work?" she asked one evening, setting a plate of pasta in front of me that I barely touched. "You've lost weight, Marcus." "Just tired," I told her, which was true, but not the whole truth. The whole truth was I'd started dreading the walk down D Block's hallway, dreading the way the flickering lights made shadows crawl along the walls, in shapes that didn't match anything actually there to cast them. 2 weeks in, I heard someone crying, not sobbing loud, just a thin, exhausted sound coming from somewhere past cell 20, which had been empty for 8 months according to the roster. I walked down, flashlights sweeping the bars, and found nothing. Empty bunk, folded gray blanket, dust undisturbed on the floor like nobody had stepped foot in there in ages. The crying stopped the second my light hit the cell, like it had been waiting for me to notice. And then it had gotten what it wanted. Chapter 3. Darkness grows. By the 3rd week, I stopped pretending things were normal, at least to myself. I just didn't know who to tell, or how to say it, without sounding like a man who needed a psych evaluation and a mandatory leave of absence. The chalk marks kept appearing, always outside, cell 14, always in that cluster, and the count kept climbing. 7, then 11, then something like 16 scratched so close together I couldn't get an accurate number. I started photographing them on my personal phone, which was against policy, but I needed proof for myself that I wasn't imagining this. I asked around about cell 1414's history. The facility's records kept on paper in the basement archive went back decades, and I spent an off-duty afternoon down there instead of sleeping, flipping through water-stained folders under a bare bulb that buzzed like a trapped wasp. Cell 14 had a history. All right. Before Delgado, before even the building's last major renovation in 1988, there'd been an inmate named Corbin Ash, convicted of nothing violent, actually some kind of fraud case, but he died in that cell in 1979. Officially, suicide, hanging. The report was thin, oddly thin for a death in custody, just 2 paragraphs, where most incident files ran 5 or 6 pages. I found something else too. A note clipped to the back of Ash's file, handwritten, no signature. It read, "Guard on duty, reported hearing counting." Ash had been requesting transfer for 3 months prior, citing something in the walls. Request denied twice. Something in the walls. My hands went cold holding that paper. That night, back on shift, I noticed the flickering in D Block had gotten worse. Not just flickering now. The lights would go fully dark for a second or 2 at a time, then snap back on. And each time they came back, I felt certain something had moved during the darkness. Nothing I could prove, just an instinct, primal and insistent, the kind that used to keep our ancestors alive around fires in the dark. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps behind me in the hallway, slow, deliberate, wet-sounding, like boots stepping through shallow water. I turned my flashlight around fast enough to catch my own held breath echoing back at me. Nothing there, just the hallway, empty, and that smell, stronger now, coppery, unmistakably like blood, though there was nothing to bleed there. I went to cell 14. Delgado was awake again, same position, hands folded. "You hear that?" I asked, and my voice came out thinner than I wanted. "He walks faster now," Delgado said. "Means he's getting close to finished." Finished with what? Delgado finally looked at me directly, and for the first time, I saw something in his expression that looked almost like pity. "You should ask for a transfer, Officer Webb, before he finishes counting." Chapter 4. Terror. I didn't ask for a transfer. I told myself I wasn't the kind of man who ran from things I couldn't explain with a flashlight and a firm voice. And besides, requesting a move without a reason that wouldn't get me laughed out of Ruiz's office felt impossible. So I stayed, and the fourth week is the one I still can't think about without my hands starting to shake. It started with the mirror in the staff bathroom near D Block's entrance. I went in to splash water on my face around 1 a.m., exhausted in that deep, bone-level way that comes from weeks of bad sleep. And when I looked up, my reflection was a half-second slow. I raised my hand. The reflection raised its hand a beat later, like it had to catch up, like it hadn't been expecting me to move. I left without drying my face. 2 nights later, doing rounds, I heard the counting myself for the first time. Not crying this time. A voice, low and rhythmic, coming from inside the walls themselves, counting numbers in a flat, exhausted monotone. 31, 32, 33. I stood frozen in the hallway, my flashlight beam shaking against the cinder block, and the counting didn't stop when I got close. It just kept going, patient, endless, like a man counting seconds until something terrible was allowed to happen. I ran. I'm not ashamed to say it now. I ran the length of D Block and didn't stop until I reached the security office, where Pruitt found me 20 minutes later, still breathing hard, sitting on the floor with my back against the lockers. "You heard it," he said. "Not a question." "You knew," I said. "You knew this whole time." Pruitt sat down across from me, heavy and slow, the way tired men sit. "Everybody who works D Block eventually hears something. Most transfer out within a month. Ones that don't..." He didn't finish the sentence. "What happens to the ones that don't?" He looked at the floor. "Delgado's been in that cell block 11 years. Longest anyone's lasted. I don't know what he knows that keeps him steady, but you should ask him before it's too late to matter." That night I went back to cell 14, shame and fear both driving me forward in equal measure. "What is it?" I demanded. "What's counting?" Delgado studied me a long moment before answering. "Corbin Ash didn't hang himself, Officer Webb. He was murdered. 3 guards on shift that night. Back in '79 they found him owed money to, and they made an example. Then they wrote up the paperwork to match a suicide, and everyone who signed off on it got promoted within the year." "How do you know that?" "Because he told me," Delgado said simply. "He's been counting every guard who's ever worked this block since, waiting to find the ones connected to the men who killed him, their sons, their grandsons, their names in the payroll system, connected by blood he can somehow trace even from inside these walls. My stomach dropped. My grandfather had worked this exact facility decades ago. I'd never mentioned it to anyone here. I'd never mentioned it to anyone at all. He's not counting random numbers, Delgado said quietly. He's counting down. And Officer Webb, I think he's almost done. Chapter 5. The Truth. I couldn't sleep after that conversation. I drove home in a gray dawn that felt like it belonged to someone else's life, and I sat in my car outside my own house for 40 minutes before I could make myself go inside. I did the research obsessively over the following days, digging through county employment archives, old newspaper microfilm at the library, anything I could access without raising questions. My grandfather, Elias Webb, had worked Blackwood Correctional from 1971 to 1985. He died when I was 11, a heart attack, quiet, unremarkable. I'd loved him as a child in the uncomplicated way you love grandparents, all peppermint candy and fishing trips. I found his name in a payroll ledger for October 1979, the month Corbin Ash died. Present on shift. Present the night of the incident report. One of 3 guards logged as being in D block that evening. I sat with that fact for a long time in the cold library silence, feeling something in my chest crack open that I didn't have words for yet. I went back to Delgado 2 nights later, unable to stay away, needing to understand. Your grandfather, Delgado said before I even asked, was probably the one who actually killed him. The report said hanging, but Ash's neck showed marks, inconsistent with rope alone. Someone strangled him first. The other 2 just helped stage it and clean up. How would you possibly know that level of detail? He shows me, Delgado said, and for the first time, something like exhaustion moved across his face, deep and ancient looking. Every night, he shows me exactly what happened, over and over, like a film reel that never stops playing. I didn't ask for this, Officer Webb, but I killed my own brother in anger, and I think that makes me the only kind of man who can sit still long enough to listen to Ash's whole story without losing my mind. Why hasn't he hurt you? Because I'm not connected to what happened to him. I'm just a witness. But you, Delgado's yellow-brown eyes fixed on mine, your blood, and he's been waiting 15 years for the last name on his list. What list? 3 guards were there that night. 1 died of natural causes in 1991. Ash let that one go, I think. Called it fair since time did the killing eventually. The 2nd guard's grandson worked here for 2 years in the early 2000s. Guard named Holloway. You can look him up. He disappeared during a night shift in D block. Case never solved. Officially, he just walked off the job and vanished. My mouth went dry. That leaves your grandfather's line, Delgado said quietly. That leaves you. Chapter 6. Final Nightmare. The first requested emergency leave that same week, citing exhaustion, and Ruiz approved it without much argument. Maybe relieved not to ask questions about a man who looked as hollowed out as I apparently did. I told myself I'd never go back to D block. I told myself I'd request a transfer to another facility entirely. Maybe leave corrections work altogether. Find something during daylight hours that didn't come with any history attached. But 3 nights into my leave, I couldn't sleep at all, and around 2 a.m., I found myself sitting up in bed, listening. The house was silent, Denise breathing steady beside me, our daughter asleep down the hall, and underneath that silence, faint but unmistakable, I heard it, counting, coming from inside our bedroom wall. 281, 282. I sat frozen, certain I'd finally lost my mind completely, certain this was exhaustion and guilt manufacturing sounds that didn't exist. But Denise stirred beside me and murmured, half asleep, "Do you hear that ticking? Sounds like it's coming from the wall." She heard it too, not counting to her ears apparently, just ticking like a clock. But something was there, something real enough to cross the boundary between us both. I didn't sleep again that night. In the morning, exhausted and desperate, I drove straight to Blackwood, badge still technically active, and walked directly to D Block, despite Ruiz's confused protest behind me. Delgado was waiting, like he'd expected me. "He followed you home," Delgado said before I spoke. "Once he knows where you live, the counting doesn't stop until it reaches 0. How do I stop this?" Delgado was quiet for a long moment, and something in his expression looked almost sorrowful. "You don't," he said. "Ash doesn't want an apology, Officer Webb. He wants what was taken from him. 15 years, he waited for that debt collected properly. Blood for blood, breath for breath. I don't think there's a version of this where you walk away whole. Then what do I do? Pray it takes only you," Delgado said, "and not your daughter's line after." I don't remember driving home that day. I remember standing in my own kitchen at dusk, Denise asking what was wrong, my daughter doing homework at the table, oblivious, humming some song from the radio. I remember the walls of my house beginning to breathe. Subtle. So subtle, I almost convinced myself it was imagination, except the numbers kept climbing, closer now, faster than before. 410, 411. That was 3 months ago. I'm writing this from a motel room now, having left my family somewhere safer, or so I hope, having told Denise only that I needed time alone to sort my head out, unable to explain the truth without sounding insane, unable to stay near them while this thing gets closer to whatever number it's counting toward. Some nights, the counting stops entirely, and that silence is worse than any number, because I know it's waiting just outside whatever door I've locked, patient in the way only the truly wronged can be patient. Last night, for the first time, the counting reached what sounded like a final number, spoken slow and deliberate, almost gentle. 500. Then silence. Then, from just behind me in this empty motel room, a voice that wasn't mine, wasn't anyone's, whispered directly against my ear. Warm breath I could actually feel against my skin. "Now we're even, Elias." I turned around. There was nobody there. But my grandfather's name isn't supposed to be spoken by anyone still living, and I haven't stopped hearing my own name whispered back to me every night since, patient, endless, counting down from 1.